Welcome to Keep Hustling, where we are going past the why to get to the how. I'm your host, the always hustling Aaron Gordon, aka NY Risk Advisor, aka Mr. #Keep Hustling. In this podcast, we will be diving deep into the professional and personal successes of our guests to find out how they hustled through the most difficult times in their life and their development to achieve the success they've gotten to today. So buckle up for what hopes to be an amazing ride. Let's get to it. Welcome to Keep Hustling with my guest, Kenneth Williamson. Kenneth, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Aaron.
Kenneth, I think that you are the first coworker that's been on the Keep Hustling podcast. We're not going to dwell on this because your employer, one of my closest friends, episode 2 or 3, I think, of the KHP, Bradley Flowers, was on, and his hustle's amazing. But I want to focus on you, but I just want to say thank you for being here all the way from the great state of Alabama. And I hope that the farm allows the internet to work and that the cows don't come in for pasture behind us. So let's jump right in. What do we need to know? And I have an idea where I want this conversation to go, but obviously these conversations kind of mold themselves. But take us back. Your hustle is unique in that I know that you've built something. I know that you're building something. And I know that you found a unique career in insurance, even though insurance is not really a new career. But a unique agency, a unique place, and a unique position of leadership that you evolved into. So I kind of just want to take us back. What led you to that, and where do you think that hustle inherently comes from in your life and in your upbringing?
Yeah. So this story, I'm going to kind of take you back and kind of go through my story a little bit. So most of y'all probably don't know me if you're watching, but if you watch the Insurance Guys podcast, you've probably heard me referenced by Scott Howell because he got pissed off at me for reading a book in the middle of the day at the office. But
yes, I remember that episode.
I'm the book reading guy. I'm on my lunch break enjoying a book. But yeah, so kind of how I got here. So I mean, like anybody in insurance, like unless you're Bradley Flowers, who's sitting there just dreaming like, oh, I want to be an insurance agent one day. Didn't cross my mind at all.
Wait, hold on. Time out. We're not going to digress. That's not why he became an insurance agent.
It's because he wanted to golf.
Exactly. I just want to be clear. I've referenced that story multiple times in the podcast. Bradley Flowers was working one summer and found the guy who was playing the most golf and said, I want his career. I woke up in the morning. My parents chained me to a chair and then told me I had to be an insurance agent. And then I said, oh, maybe I dream about this. I'm just kidding. But yeah. Go ahead. Nobody dreams about insurance.
But so all throughout college, I was going and I was studying business management, just kind of the catch-all degree people get when they have no idea what they want to do. So while I was getting that degree, I was working at Chick-fil-A throughout that time. I was there about 5 years and kind of, whenever I was ending my tenure there, I started working with an entrepreneur in the Mobile, Alabama area. Great time working with him, great guy, but at the time he couldn't pay me. I worked with him for about 6 months, learned a lot. And at a certain point, I was like, hey man, I just gotta get money. I was like, if you can introduce me to somebody, if you can't. But so that's kind of how it started. So he introduced me to Bradley. Me and Bradley had a wonderful conversation, went really well. Bradley said, hey, if you get your insurance license, we'll chat. I'll have an opportunity for you. I had no idea how long that would take. Bradley likes to tell this story. He likes to brag about it, but I kind of find it embarrassing. But so I had nothing else to do. So I stayed up for about 2 or 3 nights, did nothing but study insurance. I probably ruined my brain somehow doing that. But on the 4th day, I
You definitely became a more grumpy and angry human. And you got a buzz cut before that, but whatever.
Oh yeah. On the 4th day, I drove 4 hours, took my licensing exam, got the license, called Bradley and was like, hey, I got it. And he was like, no, you didn't. That's the pre-licensing. I was like, no, I have a license. And so we started up. I was working part-time for him, kind of doing a little bit of sales and service. And whenever initially meeting Bradley, I could really see his vision. I could see that he was, I've seen people in the past where they have these grandiose ideas. They never go through with them, but I could see that this was a guy that goes through with them. And I was like, I went on board, ground floor of this thing. Portal Insurance had only been open for a year, but Yeah, so I started off, was part-time, quickly moved to full-time. A little bit after, we realized that sales was not my forte. I can do it. I'm not passionate about it. But Bradley had asked me if I wanted to run service. At that point, it was just really me, Bradley, Natasha, and a handful of other people over time. And man, it was just hard grinding. We're starting something brand new. Bradley is creating a business far different than anything in Alabama. And for the first few years, it was nothing but just tears and hard grinding while we slowly built out what we wanted to. Having to remind ourselves every day, like, it's going to be hard today where it's easy tomorrow. We're building something. And about 2 years ago, Bradley had asked me if I wanted to run his operations because we built a really good rapport over time and understand how both of our minds work. He's the visionary, and I'm the guy that implements for him and gets things rolling.
So mad scientist and actually person who does things. Okay, great.
But yeah, no, it's been
God,
a
he's gonna
fun
hate this
journey.
episode and love it all at the same time. I love this, Kenneth. This is such a good idea that you came on this podcast. But I want to interrupt you about. I want to just interrupt you, cut in, and just ask you a question because I don't want the listeners to lose sight of something you said.
Okay.
Nobody says they want to work in an insurance agency, they want to get an insurance license, and 4 days later they have a license.
Yeah.
That's hustle. That's what this podcast is all about. What was going through your mind when you were sitting there those 3 days studying some of the most boring stuff in the world? But I imagine that something inside of you was saying, if this is going to be my career, if this is what I want to do, this is how I'm going to hustle towards it.
Yeah.
Now, I want to again ask you how on God's good earth you did that. But what's in Kenneth? What made you say you could have done it in a week? You could have done it in 2 weeks. You could have done it like a normal person and dragged it on for 6 months and like everyone else. Not that, and I don't mean to call you abnormal, but you know what I'm saying. It's pretty abnormal to do it in 2 days. So what was it in that hustle? What's there?
See, I can't pinpoint it. All I know is that I saw an opportunity and I wanted to jump on it. I didn't want anything to slow me down. I was like, if it takes me a 5th day, what if it doesn't happen? A 6th day, no shot. So I wanted it. So I really just tried to get it.
But because you felt that the opportunity wouldn't be there, or you felt like if I have an opportunity, I have to grab it by the horns. And this is what Kenneth Williamson does. He jumps on it and that bam,
Yeah. So
this is different than anything I've heard. I'm not going to say which episode this is. It's more than 20. It's more than 30 at this point. And that story, that 2 days of hustle is different than anything that I've heard.
Thank you. No, so I don't know what it is in me. Growing up, my father was in the military, kind of raised me to tackle things as they come and not to shy away from them. I used to get irritated because growing up, kind of the punishment was, if you did something, you would have to write an essay about it. Give me an essay. So I did a lot of that. And also anytime I would do some sort of chore, let's say we're vacuuming the floor. He'd review it. He'd be like, it doesn't look good enough. You vacuum it again. Doesn't look good enough. But what he wanted you to be confident that, no, I did a good job. I did the best I could. So I think it's things like that have been instilled in me. And you ever take a personality assessment, Aaron?
I was once in a sales. First of all, I'm the one asking the questions, Kenneth.
No, I'm answering the questions.
Okay, first of all, I don't know if this works. Second of all, God, these Southern guys, it's just unbelievable, these people from Alabama. But anyway, I once took a sales personality, I forgot the name of the test. I have it in my desk somewhere. And I got the result. I was in an insurance company producer school. God, man, this woman ripped me. Although it was so right. When you see it and
hurts.
it tells you, I don't know if some of it was empowering, but some of it was it comes, it's interesting. And I appreciate you for stimulating this, even though this wasn't your question. I think a lot of people, their personality takes, or their challenges, or their unique character traits sometimes are forced to take a backseat by societal norms. And no one wants to be a savage, mean tyrant or insane person in sales or running a business, but you also can't be a pushover. You know what I mean? So when it says when a personality test, and then I want to hear about yours, says that you have a strong personality, or says that you're ruthless in a kind way, because they would never say ruthless because that's bad for business, you might be taken aback and say like that's a bad thing. But at the same time, maybe that's my hustle, and I need to embrace it in a positive way. Again, you shouldn't become, a crazy tyrant, but maybe there's something to embracing that, and that becomes part of your hustle. But anyway,
Yeah.
yes, I have taken a personality test, and now I feel like I need a therapist.
Yeah. Yeah, no, cuz it was a few years back. It was probably about 3 years ago that, I always, knew I had somewhat of a drive in me, but I didn't know where it stemmed from necessarily. About 3 years ago, somebody introduced me to the Enneagram test. And so, what you do, it's a really long test. You go through it, and what it will tell you, for me, I am a three wing two. And what this means is a three wing two is called the charmer. And so, that person with the three, they really value, just getting stuff done, having all these achievements. But the wing two portion is where the person is very kind and wants to help others. So that's why 3 years ago I was able to kind of speed things up. Me and Bradley would have meetings, and I would be like, I would just be honest with him, like, this is where I see my career going. I was like, I can do the sales, I can do this, but my passion lies in I want to create resources because I love the team we work with. Like everybody on our staff love them, and all I want to do is help them, and by achieving that, I'm achieving something as well. So it's something I had to develop over time, trying to figure out. I don't think a lot of people take the time to self evaluate and understand who they are and why they do what they do or how they do it.
100%. And I think that a lot of people get lost in what they think they should be doing. Meaning,
Yeah.
any person who's in a sales role, everyone says money's in the sales is sexy, whatever, however you want to call it. And you're in a sales role, and a lot of people would lie to themselves.
Yeah.
A lot of people would get to the point where they would say, no, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is how I'm supposed to be doing it. This is how I can make the most money in the quickest time.
Yeah.
And therefore forget about the fact that my passion might be service or operations that lead to the service. You know what I'm saying? From the
Yeah.
service side of the agency, I'm going to stick it out in sales. And I think that
Yeah.
what ends up happening in the long run is that the people end up suffering, because you can only, and I'm not saying that someone who desperately needs to make money and does something that they're not passionate about because they need to feed their family is bad. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that that's where burnout comes from. I have met salespeople who are amazing. There's one of the largest, he's not private anymore, they sold, but one of the largest, the best insurance salesperson agent I've ever met in my life is currently 80 plus years old, built a massive business, and this guy will get on a plane to sell $1,000 policy. But you know what? He loves it. It's his drive. He will tell you that was passion. My father was like that. My father, was like that, where he loved the insurance sales game, absolutely despised anything having to do with the office. If he could avoid if he could try to stand outside and give out leaflets to sell insurance, he'd rather do that than answering the phone on a service task, even though he loved service and he was about service and Arbit's about service. But I think that so many people don't find that.
Yeah.
And like, how lucky are you that you found that? And then again, you leaned into that hustle and you built something crazy. So
yeah, like a few things that I learned whenever I took it. It was like you were saying, it was really crazy. I was reading it and I was like, it's reading me like a book, because I felt like I was going crazy. Friends my age, or people relatively in the same area as me, like they would just be like, "Oh yeah, you've achieved so much." But in my head, the way my personality is, I was like, "Okay, we achieved this. Move on. Don't accept it. Don't think on it. Don't count it as a win. Just go to the next win, next win, next win." And that's a pretty hard way to go about things. You do
right.
need to take a moment and be like, "Oh, not being prideful, but just taking a moment, like, oh, I have achieved this. That is pretty incredible." And then take a moment, reflect on it, and then move on to the next one instead of just shooting for the next one immediately. One thing that was kind of funny whenever I was going through it was I immediately started looking up a blog, and it was like trying to understand what my personality meant and trying to figure out some things around what my personality was to kind of adjust myself to be more of a well-rounded person. And when I was going through it, the blog said, yeah, us three wing twos, we're pretty cool, but if you have a Google document open right now and you're trying to fix everything that you don't do right, stop. And I was like, I literally had a Google document open, like, and I was like, oh my god.
but 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 I feel like also, and this really plays into everyone's hustle, when you realize and you understand your challenges and your weaknesses more than your strengths, you
Yeah,
can actually leverage the weaknesses. You can actually
yeah,
say, like, I feel like a person who says, I'm really bad at spreadsheets, let's just say that. Let's just use a very mundane, simple example. I'm very bad at spreadsheets, but they say, I must get this spreadsheet done. When they sit down and they do it, they're like, okay, this is something that I hate. It's going to take me more time than I want. But if I just zone in on it and I lean into the difficulty, I'll be able to do it. Or this is something that I'm really good at. So it's gonna be a fun day today, and I'm gonna enjoy this. Even though most people would hate doing a spreadsheet, but I love pivot tables
yeah,
and macros and all that kind of stuff. So I
yeah,
think that maybe everyone should take a personality test. Maybe
yeah,
everybody should try to learn about it, but it has to be open. It has to be honest.
yeah,
I think that, and listeners, if you're driving right now, I'd pull over because we're about to get to the serious part of this episode. I think there's something else that people discover when they do that,
hmm,
and that might be struggles or challenges that they didn't understand before,
yeah,
or they didn't understand the source of before. And I feel like for all of us, we live in a crazy place. 2024 is a crazy time to live in the world and in America. But one thing I think that we do have going for us is that acceptance on certain levels, and some of the previous taboos and things like that are going away. And by people learning more about themselves, I think they can really embrace that and become greater for it. And I
yeah,
know that you've gone through that personal journey, all while building this business, crushing it, employee number two, doing all that. So maybe take us, I usually ask pivotal moments in careers, but I assume you'll say that was the moment that you got your license and Bradley told you to come work for him. We've heard that. So maybe take us to the most pivotal personal moment for you,
yeah.
and kind of
So
and take us through that if you're okay with that.
yeah, so it was probably about a year and a half ago, and kind of throughout my whole life, I've kind of experienced this exact same thing. I would have 2 weeks of just manic, let's get stuff done, super happy, whole different person, talking fast. And then immediately after that 2 weeks is over, just depressed, shell of a person, sit in a corner, stare at a wall. The whole time, though, so I'd been going through this for a while, and I could hide it really well. And that's the problem with these, let's call them mental illnesses. That's the problem with it. So I'm a very structured person, but I have to be very intentional with how I structure myself. Like, I have to have a calendar running at all times, alarm going, hey, you need to eat. Hey, you need to take a moment to meditate. You need to work out. You need to do this. Now, without that, I wouldn't do it. So that's one
You
thing I
would
had to learn for
you would
myself.
grind it out for 3 days and get your insurance license.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like I would have to have those things to help me because otherwise I would just in those slumps fall back down. But see, this is something really important. You have to actually talk about these things. So it was probably about a year and a half ago. I was kind of talking to one of my friends. I was, in the down moment. And I was talking to her, I'm like, I'm just gonna be honest, this is something I've been experiencing. And she was like, I'm experiencing that too. And I was like, oh, really? And so, we've just kind of chatted about it for a few months, and it was relatively the same. And I started digging more into it. And one thing that I was seeing was the potential for it being bipolar disorder. Now, that can affect a lot of people in a lot of different ways. You could be a person that is just crazy spontaneous, super happy, just spends money all the time. And then maybe on the 2 weeks down, you're just having benders and whatever, what have you, just very detrimental to yourself. Now, again, I had seen those things in me. Like I'm not that crazy sporadic spend money and then go on a bender person, but I would just like, oh, I have to be doing something right this moment. I cannot relax. Let's go mow the lawn at 11 p.m. Let's pick the weed, like anything, just very sporadic. Work life balance did not exist. Relationships weren't as fleshed out and well as they could have been. But it was very important to start those conversations. And I think it's really important. It's different with women because, they feel that they can be more open and honest with each other. With men, it's way different. Like, it was a very challenging conversation for me. But I started having those conversations near the end of last year. And one of the key ones was I just sat with Bradley because, like, over time, I had kind of Bradley has fostered a really amazing environment where we can just be open and honest and we're going to figure things out together. So, in a few of our meetings, I would sit down with him and I'm like, I just feel like I'm going crazy. Like, I'm down. I don't know why I'm down. I have my routine. I'm working out. I'm eating right. All these things. But then, I kind of explained to him, I'm like, I've been looking into it. I think I might be bipolar. And he was like, you don't seem like you are. And that's the thing with mental illness is you can hide it so well. But he didn't
Or
say
people
it
don't understand it, or the average person doesn't understand it. I think that, that it's
Yes.
so. Keep going. I don't want to interrupt
Yeah.
you because
So,
I appreciate this.
but he didn't say it in like a condescending way. It was more like you hide it well, which is the problem. And so he went to me and he was like, "Hey, I'll help you find whatever help you need. We'll get this figured out." So, not a sponsor, but I get very busy within the day. So I found this app called Brightside. And what I was able to do on it was I was able to log in, I was able to take a questionnaire, and it kind of asks you in a certain time frame instead of how you feel that day. Because that's the thing. You would gaslight yourself. Let's throw that term out there. I would gaslight myself on those manic ups and be like, "Oh, I'm perfect. The bad me doesn't exist." Oh, and then just continue down that cycle. So when I was taking the assessment, I was going through it, and it was like, "In the past 3 weeks, have you experienced this? Do you feel this? Do you feel this?" And yeah, my depression, anxiety were like off the charts. Like, it was pretty intense. And so I scheduled a meeting with this very nice woman, and we sat down and talked, and we were going through things, and she was like, "Yeah, I. It seems like you are right. It seems like you have bipolar disorder." And I if you know anything about me, Aaron, or have heard from Bradley, I'm very much I don't want it to sound bad, but like I like being in control. Like, I don't like things that take me out of control. I like being present of mind, control everything I can, like work out, eat right. So the idea of taking medication scared the out of me, man. Like,
But let
that
me
was
ask you something. I want to ask you
terrifying.
something about that. Not to interrupt you, but
Yeah.
I'll tell you what's interesting. You said, and you say, and I believe it. I'm not, questioning you that you're the type of person that loves being in control. Yet, you said that it's so important for people to embrace themselves and learn about themselves and
Yeah.
discover these challenges, which can only happen if you relinquish control.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's a catch-22 because I'm not saying that you don't like to be in control. There are people,
Yeah.
I'm the same way, meaning I also enjoy every once in a while something crazy happens and you just kind of embrace being stuck in the rain with a flat tire because it's so hilarious. Like when my wife and I missed a flight with 4 children and we were stuck in an airport for a day, like it's so out of your
Yeah.
control that it's funny. I don't know if you're like that, but those every once in a while, as long as they happen very rarely, I'm okay with it. But it's like sometimes the people who think or actually do think that they do or actually do flourish with the most control actually have the greatest personal growth when they relinquish control, and
Yeah.
vice versa. Sometimes people who think that they thrive in chaos, for lack of a better term, can gain the most personal growth when they have some
Yeah.
sort of structure.
Oh, yeah.
And I so appreciate you sharing that because maybe there's someone out there who's scared to relinquish the control, and that's what's holding them back
Yeah.
from being their happiest or embracing their true self,
Yeah.
or vice versa. And I think it's just the dichotomy of the last 25 minutes of getting the license in such an efficient manner, building an incredible business, realizing that service was the way to go and not sales, building an incredible machine around that service, technology and client service and things like that, against the backdrop of that seems like everything is figured out And you're saying maybe not, or maybe things weren't, or maybe there was further development necessary. So I think that is so powerful for our listeners. So I really, Kenneth, thank you for sharing that. Really.
Yeah, no, and I think it is really important to have these conversations. Whenever I was going through all my self discovery and everything, I'm the kind of friend like if you're a friend of mine, I'm gonna be like, man, if you don't tell me when you're depressed where I can help you, I'm gonna have a problem with you. You got to tell me. Open, honest conversations, and like I've been honest with this. I try to be as honest with other people as I can, like coworkers. I'll just explain like, hey, this is something I've gone through. Like, it's okay. It doesn't make you weak. We're all just on this earth trying to survive and thrive. Like that's all we're trying to do.
Do you think that you're better and happier now that you've come out the other end? Or not come out the other end, but are embracing that?
I do. I feel like a much more well-rounded person. I can take steps back and breathe and not just be a work machine that just is looking for the next achievement
Well, I
constantly.
can tell you one thing. I think that we're all lucky in the industry and in your circle that happened, even though you might say that you're working less hours. And I'm sure I know Bradley. I know that we're all lucky. And one day when you move to New York and we work together, it'll be fine. And whatever, forget the Alabama. Well, I'll bring a cow for you. Kenneth, we ask our guests to leave us with their favorite inspirational, motivational quote and what it means to them. I assume you have a bunch or one that speaks to you. Really, thank you for being here. Thank you for being the open and honest book. Thank you for sharing. And everyone should listen to this episode. I haven't said this before, maybe more than once, or at least a clip more than once, to be inspired to be our best selves. So really, Kenneth, thank you. And the floor is yours.
Yeah, so I don't know the quote exactly, but most mornings I like to listen to this video, and whatever you think of him, it is a good video, but it's Jim Carrey. And Jim Carrey, he kind of explains like, he's gone from the goofball comedian to whatever he is now. But anyway, the video is really good. And he sits and he talks about, again, we're going back to self-discovery. He's like, I had to understand who Jim Carrey was. Jim Carrey is not me. Jim Carrey is how I'm perceived, how I display myself to others, like how kind am I, how whatever this is. That's who you are. You're not just your physical self. You're how you affect others and the environment around you. But so that's the quote I really like.
Amazing. I love that. Kenneth, really thank you for being here.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you. This has been another episode of Keep Hustling. Remember, do well by doing good and always keep hustling. All right, hustlers, that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode. Thank you for listening. The listeners are the most important part of this show. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more listeners. Plus, be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. We have some amazing guests and topics lined up for you, and we don't want you to miss out. And finally, if you have any suggestions, comments, or even just want to say hello, please feel free to reach out to us on all social media platforms. We are Keep Hustling Pod on Instagram, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We would love to hear from you to continue the conversation. Thanks again for tuning in and supporting our podcast. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and keep hustling.